Romano, Ranking Member Westerman, and members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to present this testimony. I'm a geologist, environmental scientist, and manager with over 30 years of experience in the mining and consulting industries, including 23 years with Rio Tinto. During my career, I've performed permitting, evaluation, design, and environmental work at more than 50 mines and mining projects across the world. I believe mining is essential to sustain our society and that most commercially viable ore deposits should be developed. However, that does not mean that all ore bodies should be developed, regardless of their negative environmental, commercial, or social impacts. The Pebble Project is located in the most sensitive, globally significant, and challenging environmental setting of any mining project I have ever reviewed. It will be extremely difficult to construct, operate, and close a commercially viable mine in this setting that does not do permanent material harm to the Bristol Bay salmon fishery. Risks associated with the smaller 20-year mine proposed by the Pebble Partnership have been reduced, but by no means have they been eliminated. Even if everything goes exactly according to plan, the proposed mine would disturb 14 square miles of land and 8 miles of salmon-bearing rivers and streams. It would create a very large contaminated water treatment liability, which will persist for many decades to centuries after closure. Despite these challenges, the Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, is scheduled for completion in less than half the time of a typical new mining project. This overly rushed process has contributed to the deeply flawed draft EIS that was released 6 months ago. Much of the EIS analysis contains insufficient detail to determine if the planned actions are adequate or practicable. There are significant omissions. The document commonly understates potential impacts, and in a number of significant instances, the conclusions are clearly wrong. Based on my experience, the draft EIS does not even meet industry standard practice. The proposed EIS project only mines about 10% of the total resource and by necessity must process relatively low-grade ore. It would produce only half as much metal for sale as the smallest Pebble mine plan that has undergone a rigorous, independent, and publicly available financial evaluation. This represents a loss of roughly $15 billion in revenue. Based upon a careful review of the available financial data, it is my professional opinion that the mine plan being evaluated by the EIS is almost certainly not economically feasible. I have estimated the proposed project to have a net present value of approximately negative $3 billion. The financial analysis for the 20-year mine plan provided in the draft EIS by the Pebble Partnership is deeply flawed. It ignores smelting and refining costs, understates capital and operating costs, and fails to provide even a placeholder cost for closure. This represents a fatal flaw in the process because a larger mine would almost certainly need to be constructed in order to attain a positive rate of return on the very large initial capital investment, which is almost certain to exceed $6 billion. The current EIS is thus almost certainly not evaluating the true environmental impacts and risks associated with a viable mining project. Even a small expansion of the project to extract 20% of the ore body would almost double the size of the disturbed footprint, quadruple water quality risks, and likely spread large-scale impacts into 3 different river drainage basins. Before closing, I also feel obligated to point out 2 of the more significant problems provided by Mr. Collier's written testimony. The examples cited in his EIS timeline are misleading. They are mostly oil and gas projects or mines that are 10 to 1,000 times smaller than the proposed Pebble project. They all have a very different and generally much lower risk profile, so it is no surprise they were completed more rapidly. The closest analog cited is the Donlin mine, EIS, which took 6 years to complete compared to the 2 years allotted for Pebble. The written testimony is also completely silent about the economics of the small mine being permitted, and that will almost certainly lose billions of dollars without a major expansion. In fairness to the EIS process, the investment community, and local stakeholders, I would urge the Pebble Limited Partnership to clearly demonstrate that the 20-year mine plan detailed in the EIS is financially viable. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you.